Welcome to Deeper Foundations, where conscious building meets personal transformation. I'm your host, Nick Stevens, a builder, project manager, and lifelong explorer of the deep layers beneath the surface of construction and self. In this podcast, we go beyond blueprints and budgets. We talk about sacred geometry, emotional intelligence in the field, healing through hands-on work, and the stories that shape who we are in the trades and beyond. Whether you're swinging a hammer, managing a project, or just curious about the heart behind construction, this space is for you. So let's dive in. You're listening to Deeper Foundations. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Deeper Foundations. I'm your host, Nick Stevens, and on today's episode, we are going to talk about what it's like to build something that lasts. And I don't just mean like a construction company. I mean something that is based on values, deep relationships, and something with a vision. And I've got my guest here, Blake Compton of Compton Construction. And yeah, we're just going to tell his story of what it's like to, be an entrepreneur, create your own business, and on the deeper level, what it's like to do that alongside your father and your relationship with him and your unfortunate loss that was unexpected. And yeah, just have you share your vulnerability and tell us your story. So welcome, Blake.
Hello. Welcome to me.
Yeah, welcome to you.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course. We've done a couple preliminary podcast recording, kind of working the kinks out. You've been behind the camera, working the computer, working the audio for some of our episodes with some other guests. So grateful to have you on the other side of the camera, in front of the mic, and yeah, just telling us about your story. So yeah, I guess where we're going to start off is just telling us a little bit about, who Blake Compton is and, how you got into construction. I think is a great start.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I got into construction 20 years ago this year. So it's kind of interesting. I'll be 40 this year. So half my life I've been in the industry. But for some father-son duos, like I didn't have the same upbringing that I've seen in the industry many times where the son was working with the father from, as long as they could walk, they've been in construction. So my early years, my dad didn't really push me to, wear a tool belt. And yeah, I went on a job site here and there, but it wasn't really like a hard thing that he would push on me. And it was more just like, that's what he did. That's what he did for a living. And that's what everyone in the family did, as far as like uncles and other cousins and things like that. So I knew the industry, but I wasn't really like ground down into it.
Sure. And were you aspiring to work in construction, or did you have other dreams of like, I want to do this?
Yeah, no, early, in my high school days, I wanted to be a chef, actually. I was really interested in food.
Okay.
And in fact, like my senior year, I applied to more culinary schools than regular colleges. And then I kind of just like decided I wasn't sure that's what I really wanted to do. And I was pretty pragmatic as a young kid. And I just went to the local OSU branch my first year out of high school because I didn't want to waste my parents' money. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So, but what I really was passionate about was soccer at the time. And,
okay.
I helped start the OSU Newark branch's club soccer team. And then I was playing on my club team. I was 18, turning 19, so I was in my last year of club soccer. And I got recruited to go play for an NAIA school. And that summer, I worked my first summer job doing construction, and it was really because I had worked a pizza delivery job and worked it for about a year and saved up a bunch of money, traveled to Brazil to play soccer. And when I came back, I was just like, yeah, I'm done with this job.
Gotcha.
And I literally just went to my dad and played the son card and was just like, I just need a job, Dad. Can you get me a job? And he was like, I can pay you $10 an hour to push a broom, and we'll pay for your gas to drive from Granville to Columbus. Nice. And so that summer, my first job was a new MRI facility, and it was legitimately like the most boring thing ever. Like I would get there, no one would tell me what was going on. and I would clean up, and then it'd be clean. I'd have nothing to do. And I remember, like, I was like 19 years old. I'd go upstairs on the second floor of this empty office building and like sit in a chair and just stare out the window because there was nothing to do. And that first like 2 months I worked there, I think I locked my keys in my car like 5 times because I was just a dumb kid. And like,
Sure.
I was not inspired in that summer by construction. It was the next year. I went on that soccer journey. I got that soccer scholarship. Had really tough time in Cleveland, and then I went to Bowling Green trying to like walk on to a D1 school, and really just wasn't inspired. Didn't make the team. Wasn't inspired by Bowling Green.
Yeah.
And when I came back home that next summer, I was like, man, I think. I got an opportunity to work on a project where it was ground up, and so the beginning of the summer was just dirt.
Yep.
And at the end of the fall, we were building this building, and into the winter, I decided not to leave home and continue to work full time, and I started going to Columbus State, and I joined a soccer team there.
Okay.
And then it was that building in Blacklick, Ohio, that I built in 2006. That was I say I built it. I did pushed a broom and cleaned up the job site.
Right, but kind of a turnkey operation.
Yeah, start to finish on the construction team I was on, and I learned a lot from that superintendent that I worked for,
Okay.
John Roush. He was a guy that really changed my mind about the world. I mean, he was a really big influence on me. Prior to that, I was kind of a passionate little kid that blamed my parents for everything, and he was the one that helped me get out of that.
Nice.
And kind of shifted my view on the world. And
Yeah.
and we had a lot of deep conversations in that little job trailer, and it was one of those like 5x8 job trailers that didn't even have a bathroom. I just remember sitting in there that summer, like looking at drawings, and I'd read page after page after page and be like, I have no idea what I just read. That was also, I think I was 20, turning 21. I remember my hands being on my head and reading these drawings, and then I pulled my hands off my head, and like hair was falling out, and I was starting to bald at 20.
At 20,
I was just
wow.
like, oh no, this
geez.
sucks.
Yeah.
This is what real life is.
So at this point, you had no experience in construction. Like you hadn't swung a hammer, like worked on any kind of like projects growing up with your dad. This was just like coming home from college and saying, hey, Dad, I need a new job. He hooks you up. You start getting experience after a year or two. At what point did you like start interacting with your dad and working with him? Was that was he a direct supervisor, project manager, or was he just somebody that was working in the same company that you were?
He, I pretty much started out on his job sites as a laborer.
Okay.
So I didn't really, I had daily conversations with him, but it was kind of like skipping over steps, like he was the project manager. And so a lot of the times it was just like advice at those early days. And it was a lot of stuff like back in the early 2000s, it was just everything, it was just easier to make money, and everything was cheaper. And everything was a lot less efficient. I mean, watching like the roofers or watching the carpenters build this building, like they would take a whole 8x4 sheet of plywood and cut a corner off just for the little corner to do the roof, and then throw the whole rest of the sheet away.
Wow.
And I'd like look in these like dumpsters and be like, Dad, you could build like a whole house with the amount of wood that they're throwing away. He's like, it's not in our contract to care about that. And, I didn't understand that back then. But that's just not how the industry is anymore. I mean, we pay attention to our materials in a much more sustainable, thoughtful way.
Absolutely.
And, I think the other thing is that, that project in particular was really important. And John was an important superintendent that taught me a lot about leadership. But for the first 2 years being a laborer, I didn't have any good superintendents until Paul Frere.
Okay.
And when I say that, I mean start to finish. John was a great leader, but he was actually not a superintendent. He had turned into one pretty later in life. And so he didn't have 20, 30 years experience. He was just from the industry. And he was more in the maintenance and operations side and turned into a superintendent.
Gotcha.
And so I had a lot of guys that I worked for that were just giant liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And they scared me. Like I worked on a project in Italian Village where like one day I called my dad up freaking out because like it was raining really hard and these guys were running a grate all down an alley and they were carrying materials, and it was like a big pile of metal, and they were like inches away from electric lines, and they were like rocking against the electric lines. And I was just like, Dad, I don't think I want to be here when these people die. And he's just like, just leave, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and that one wasn't his project. So
Okay.
that was a different project manager. And I didn't know how to talk to project managers other than my dad at that point.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I do remember, like the first lesson I ever got from my dad, is I went to his office and I went to the secretary and I was like, hello, is my dad here? And they were like, oh, Harold, yeah, let me get him. And then Harold took me into his office and he was just like, hey, if you're going to work for me, don't call me your dad. Like, just call me Harold. You can call me dad at home, but call me Harold at work. And so for the rest of my career with him, I just called him Harold, which sometimes people would think it was weird. You know, when I'm just like hanging out and be like, Harold, get over here. And like, you call your dad by his name? I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it actually wasn't until he died that I like pretty much switched back to dad. Like, I don't really call him Harold anymore because he's dead. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so it sounds like, you know, getting a year or two into the industry, you saw an opportunity to kind of call out some things that were going on in construction. You know, there weren't really anybody that was supervising you in a way that was in a mentorship. I mean, you might have had like your dad to go to. It sounds like there was this other guy that wasn't a direct supervisor, but you know, from what I know about you, you saw an opportunity to really like step into those supervisor roles and like be a leader. And I think that that's where your career really started kind of taking off. How long were you stepping up within that company before you were like, hey, I want to go out and do this on my own?
Well, you know, I kind of got propelled pretty quickly once I made it a full-time job.
Yeah.
I think I worked on, you know, three or four projects over the course of 2 years. And then in 2007, I got to run my first job and first project as a superintendent. And you know, my title was assistant superintendent, but I didn't have anyone I was like working under. I was just running the job myself.
Yeah.
And my client, who's a dear friend of mine, Renee Doss, she would tell you that job ran me. I didn't run anything on that job. And it was really, really hard for me. I learned so many lessons on how to talk to people, how to follow through, what to self-perform, what not to self-perform, safety. That was the only project in my career that I climbed up a 20-foot extension ladder upside down.
Oh.
So it buckled and fell, and I like Superman like moved my hands off the as it was dropping and like slid off of the ladder and onto my butt and somehow like fell almost 20 feet, but also didn't get hurt. And I was just like, and I was alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you only do that once.
Exactly.
Either way, you only do that once.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that job site was really hard. And then the second project was a physical therapy practice that was also equally as hard, but I was figuring it out. And I like got it done on time and under budget and made money and made a happy client and I struggled with some inspection things. And I remember specifically, like I had a month to get all this stuff done and I had to work every day and it was so stressful and I like timed it like perfectly. And then I was communicating with my dad every step of the way. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And we get to the final inspection and I fail. And it was over like filling out a form that I had talked to the inspector about my plan for like a month.
Yep.
And he's like, well, you didn't fill the form out, so I have to fail you. And you're like, and I like remember calling my dad crying, like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yep.
Help me. Like, why didn't you know this? You know? And he was just mad at the inspector. He's like, you did everything right. This inspector screwed you, you know? It's like,
yeah.
Okay. The beginning of that lesson.
Mm.
But after that project, the company my dad was working at with his business partner, broke up with their other partners. And so my dad and his partner at the time, Tim Galvin, left this other company and I ended up being their first employee. And so that was really where I cut my teeth doing all business things around a construction company because I had to do AP, AR, contract writing, subcontracts, file management, organization. I did all these things that like I didn't know at the time, but like years later when I started my own company, I was like, oh, I know how to do all this stuff.
Right. You're 22, 23 at this point?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did everything wrong. Like I'd write, Tim would be like, my other partner, or the other boss would be like, write these 10 subcontracts. And I'd write all 10 of them. It'd take me all day. And I'd be like, here you go. And he'd be like, well, 8 of those are the wrong form. You got to use this other form. And he didn't tell me about it. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, crap. Okay. And then I'm just go and do it again.
Yep.
And get to like,
Repetition.
the repetition of like what didn't work and what did work. And then, we brought on Paul Frere, who has worked for me and mentored me. And he was really the one that like, I went to his job site. We were doing a new build up in Delaware, and I was his assistant because it was a new build medical facility, but it also had like 3 active build out, tenant build outs at the same time as the construction. So I came in to like do the tenant build outs with Paul. And like I just learned so much about how to follow through and make phone calls and make fires, like when someone's like, I'll be there tomorrow, like, and they're not there tomorrow, like you kind of ruin their life. Like,
Right.
You got to yell at them. You got to like make them feel uncomfortable. So like they know that you can't be stepped on. And it's like, it's a really hard thing to do. And I've seen the other side of that lesson from Paul's, like, you can't make everything a fire. You can't always be the one that's like yelling at everyone. And like,
Right.
you have to learn how to use your words nicely, and you have to learn how to like understand that there's a human story behind everything.
Yep. It's a dance.
Yeah.
For sure. One that you've been teaching me, over the last 6 to 12 months, as I've stepped into kind of a project management role working for your current company, Compton Construction. And so I'm kind of seeing, I already know this story a little bit, but as you dive in deeper with it, kind of taking on this mentorship role and using your life experiences to kind of pass the torch or teach people the way that you were taught. And so, yeah, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, you're working directly more with like a Paul Frere. So at this point you're working for a different company. This is the second company that you.
So yeah, I mean, I can use the name. So it was originally Brexton.
Okay.
And then when my second year in the industry, they partnered with a company called Highland Management Group.
Got it.
Which is just down the street from here. They're still at Parsons and Broad.
Oh,
they're on the 2 little sandy buildings at Parsons and Broad across from the Chinese restaurant.
Yep.
And then my third year, Highland and Brexton broke up, and Brexton went on their own and started doing redevelopment stuff. And really, what inspired me, like my dad always like supported me and inspired me, but like Tim Galvin was showed me what ambition looked like in the industry and like vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget at 815 Grandview Avenue, which is at Grandview and 33 behind that BP. There was an old building that was an old like single-story block building that had an architecture firm that used to design like Walmarts or something. And I remember like he had bought the building and was going to redevelop it, and he had this big vision, and I had to go in and like count chairs and count random stuff that was in the building and like take pictures and document things. I didn't know why.
Yep.
And I remember like walking with him and talking to him about it, and just like, why are we doing this? Why does this make sense? Like, and like just his vision and thoughtfulness, and like, like the idea that he had there was just like, oh, we're going to cut this building up so we can create this alley, and this alley is going to be accessible. And now we have this 10,000 square foot building that's separate to this big building, and then we're going to do business condos, and this is why those things make sense. And like all of that stuff made sense back then. Over the years it stopped making sense, but like the vision that he had was just like really inspiring. And like he let me, Tim was a pretty open book when it came to his business, which is still how I operate. So is Harold. But to like share documents and share like the files and share financials and show how things are done, and not like hide them and treat them like some kind of like deep trade secret. Because at the end of the day, I mean, most of what we do in the industry is from a spreadsheet. Even when you have software, it's just a fancy spreadsheet.
Right.
And so it's actually how creative you can be with your mind, and how you can take the numbers and take the players, the people, and like put them all together and make the medicine to do the thing,
Right.
And it's so much more than a spreadsheet.
Yep. Definitely. There's so much more that comes into, landing the contracts and setting yourself up and, something that I've observed in Compton Construction is just the way that you have these deep relationships with everybody that works for you, whether they're a good friend, like myself before coming and working for you, family members, obviously your dad came and worked for you. And yeah, just pulling in people that you've had relationships with over the years, and in doing that, you're able to generate business, but also build amazing relationships, not just with the people that you work with, but within your community. You've done a lot of great things here in Columbus, Ohio. And so sure, you can take all those documents, you can work off of these spreadsheets, but if you're not doing the whole, cooking and concoction of this magical, remedy to be able to do what you do, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. It made me think of something with Dad, which is one of the amazing things about coming to the industry, and something I experienced immediately. It wasn't all these like lessons from Dad. Sure there were lessons, but is that everyone we worked with from like when I joined when I was 19 years old, and 19, 20, 21, everyone I worked with knew my dad and had great things to say about him. From the drywaller to the carpenter to the electrician to the entry-level painter to the owners of the businesses, the bankers, the inspectors, the clients, like everyone loved him. And so anywhere I went, it was just easier because they're like, "You're Harold's son. I love Harold. Let me tell you a story about Harold." And so like it gave me a chance to start on the right foot pretty much in every relationship.
People still talk about him today. Yeah. I mean, me working for Compton now, "Oh, you work for Blake?" "Yeah." "Oh man, Harold," and they would just go on and tell a great story about how they knew about him or worked with him in the past. So, it's been a couple of years since his passing, and people are still, talking about how great of a person he was, as well as you. Apple does not fall far from the tree.
Yeah. And that I guess charisma and kindness and heart that he had, but also tenacity and work ethic and joy, shapes what are now our core values at our company. But the early years, he just loved to work hard, and I loved to make him proud. And so I would work as hard as possible to make him proud, and vice versa. And so like the first couple of years of business, I mean, we worked most weekends, and we would do anything. We were painting, we were doing wallpaper, we were doing drywall work, we were, installing doors and running trim, and a lot of the times it would be just me and him. Sometimes it'd be Jeremy Miller and this other guy, Dustin Snow, who were my first two employees. I actually hired those two guys before Dad joined, which is a story in and of itself. And but yeah, like it was just we did whatever it took to be successful. And my favorite project that Harold and I ever worked on was the Idea Foundry, and that really propelled my career. My story in Franklinton, it really started my story in Franklinton. We did the land grant brewing and then the Idea Foundry like back to back. And
two really big projects.
At the time, they were the biggest projects back to back for us. And the Idea Foundry was the first project I did that wasn't with like purely private money. It was kind of like a city project with some grant money, and there was an owner's rep, and I'd never dealt with an owner's rep before. And like it was the first project that me and my dad like went to every meeting together. There was other projects where we'd go and like start the meetings off and like get the project going, and then he would finish it, and I would have to go sell something else, because those early days I did every job. But I remember like we donated, I mean, 6 figures worth of stuff to the Idea Foundry to get them open in phase 1. And like I single-handedly painted most of that first floor and got like Sherwin-Williams to donate paint, all the paint, and like managed a bunch of volunteers to paint stuff. And I remember people like Jim Sweeney. I don't know if he knows this story, but he like painted this whole room over an entire day, and I came in and he had like done the worst job in the world. And I had to like go back. I had to just like smile and let him leave, and then I just had to repaint
Redo the whole thing.
And he was pushing the paint. I don't know if any painters are on here, but like, you got to get enough paint on the roller, and then you put it on the wall, and then you leave it. You don't push it around. And there were streaks everywhere. Anyways,
well, you're gonna teach me on Thursday how to be a good painter, not to do that.
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
That project was something that was like a big lesson, especially for my relationship with Alex, the owner of the Idea Foundry, because we just went so above and beyond, Harold and I and the whole company, and just delivered on nights and weekends and free stuff. And that, like, after we finished the project, he was telling everyone about us. And I had to like tell him that, hey, stop saying that we do free work. Stop saying that we'll do anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, just say that we deliver on value.
Right.
Like, change the words you're using. He's like, oh, I get it now. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that again. Like, that was really hard. Like,
don't oversell us.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, the thing is like when we would do that, there was never a complaint by my dad. In fact, the whole career together, if I had an issue on a weekend, he would drop what he was doing and come and work with me, whatever it was. Yeah. Even sometimes where it's like he would go and do the work and I would just be there with him. Like I didn't even have to do the work because he just enjoyed being around me and doing stuff that was rewarding.
Wow.
And it was really, really special to have that kind of a person in your life. Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's briefly like rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
And talk to us about how you kind of went out on your own. How old you were, like what time of the year. Yeah. when it was in your life,
what time of the day was it?
Yeah.
Was like,
tell me the hour, but 2012.
Yeah.
Okay.
2012.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, I mean, to rewind a little bit more just to say, so, I fell in love with the industry and wanted to make it a full-time job. And, by the end of 2008 was like, I knew what I wanted to do and I was getting good at it. And then the economy tanked and I lost my job. And we actually built out a recording studio where I got one paycheck in 2009 and me and the other owner's son worked for like 3 months for free, thinking we were going to come back to work the whole time. And it wasn't like a play. It was like they had opportunities and they just kept falling through.
Yeah.
And then at some point they were like, you just got to go on unemployment and be done. And so I did work some odd job construction jobs. I worked for a roofing contractor and a carpentry contractor for Green Construction. I worked for a number of months for them. I worked for a house flipper. I did my own work. I started my own maintenance company, and I started doing maintenance with John Roush.
Yep.
And then in 2011, Brexton got enough work to bring us back, and I went back to work. And my first job was actually in Franklinton. It was for Lower Lights, who's now a current repeat client for Compton Construction. And I think 6 months into running a job site, not even, maybe it was less than that. It was like the summer of 2011. I'd been working for most of the year, and I get an email on my BlackBerry, the one with the little scroller on it.
Yep.
And it's like, hey, everyone has to take this personality test. Do it by Friday. And so I'm out on a job site and I'm like taking it on my BlackBerry and I'm like filling it out and like, I didn't type my name with capital letters. I was just like under Case Blake and like super instead of superintendent. And I was like filling this whole thing out on my BlackBerry. And then like a month goes by, I don't think anything of it. And I go into the office to get my mail and like my test is there, my results, and I'm like reading it and I'm like talking to the secretary and I'm like blown away by the results. I'm like, this is me, so exactly me. They must have interviewed, Tim and Harold, and then Tim comes out and he's like, no, this is just your results, has nothing to do with anything with we said or did.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I need to talk to you. And I'm like, oh shit, and so I go into his office and he like hands me new business cards. He's like, you're not going to be in the field anymore. You're going to be vice president of business development. And like my title was assistant superintendent. And I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And so boom, I got promoted to the sales role, and I was already actually selling. I was already selling to those maintenance clients I had before I went back to work.
Sure.
And I was getting projects, and so I think that was the seed. And then the test came in and they were like, let him do this, like let him sell.
Yep.
And he had never, Tim was the sales guy for the company, and he had never had someone other than himself doing sales. So he created a commission base and like a structure that we like kind of handshook on like how it would be. And he was like, this isn't the final, but this is how we're going to do it for now. And then if it doesn't feel right, we'll figure it out, you know? And so I worked for like 6 months in this like model that actually financially didn't make any sense to the company. Like it promoted me to sell smaller jobs, and I would get a higher commission than if I sold a bigger job. And so I went to him on that, and then I had some other things going on with the company that were actually around core values. And like not knocking the man, because everyone has their own core values and it's his company. But his company was built around religion and God, and like focused on the kind of like serving that first and foremost.
Yep.
And that wasn't and isn't me. And I kind of felt like a false salesman. At that era, you know, in my mid-20s there, 25, turning 26, I was in the LGBT community, and I was being a part of like alternative transportation and just a lot of other like liberal ideas and city things. And I just didn't feel like the company I was working for represented who I was acting like. And so I had a moment in February of 2012 where I went into my dad's office and was just like, I'm quitting and I'm going to go get a job somewhere else. And I'm thinking about Wagenbrenner, which is now Thrive. And I'm thinking about this other company, but I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, okay, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, an existing client, a longtime friend of mine that was from those maintenance days, calls me up like nonchalant. Hey, Blake, we got this issue over at this physical therapy practice on Broad Street. Can you go check it out? And I go out there, and I hadn't quit yet. I had just told my dad I wanted to quit. I go out there and I like look at this project, and there's just like an emergency mold remediation. Like the mold's breathing on the walls.
Yeah.
And people are being seen in this physical therapy practice because they didn't realize what it was. So I like get it shut down and then like start working on it. And that week I'm just like, maybe I'll start my own company. And I had a brand. It was called CR Services, and it standed for Compton Roush. And it was a kind of homage to John Roush because he wasn't a partner or anything, but it was just kind of like he was my mentor at that era.
Right.
And yeah, I just stupidly was like, that one project is enough to start a company. Let's do this. And my guy Dustin, that was my first employee, was already working for me basically as an assistant that did whatever I asked him to do.
Yeah.
And then I called up Jeremy Miller and was just like, hey, do you want to come work part-time and work for me? And then the both of them worked like 32 hours a week, and they would share, like they would overlap. I was like, I can't pay full time, and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, we just made it work, and it was very bumbly. And it was just one project. And the great thing about like kind of the moment was that Harold was still Tim's business partner. So Tim kind of had a vested interest of not screwing me. And he was a kind man. And so he let me keep my cell phone. He let me keep my email for a month. And he's like, and then we just put a list of all the projects we were looking at, all the different clients. And he said, don't go after these guys.
Mm-hmm.
You can have these, and don't try to take our work. We're good.
Yeah.
And so like he was really, really kind and helpful in that moment because he could have done all these other things. But he also had, you know, in the moment, a vested interest of keeping his business partner happy too.
Right.
And over the coming months, when I kind of left that company and was doing my own thing, my dad just kind of got unhappy at the company, and he was like, come, can I join you? And like he took I think over a $50,000 pay cut to come work for me because I was like, I can't pay you anything. But
right.
So I think he made like 50 grand a year that first year at the company.
Yeah.
And I was making like $8 an hour maybe running the company. But sure. I just that's just what I thought I had to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, pay everyone else and then I'll eat, you know, kind of thing. And yeah, and that was just that was how the company started, off that one project. And we had our main client those early years was my club soccer coach. Like he was a property manager, and he got a lot of work for us, and it wasn't fun work, and it was kind of cutthroat. And but it was also where like Jeremy learned how to estimate, and like when he was learning how to estimate, like I was pursuing all types of work. I used to, like, every week I would work, probably at least 5 days a week until after 2 in the morning. And usually my procrastination, my ADHD, I would like take that energy and like do things I shouldn't do at that time.
Yeah.
So one of the things is like I would go on the city's website, on the permit website, and I would search every permit that was pulled every week. And I would look at every single one. And I would look at who pulled them and if they had a contractor and if there was any information I could find on them. And then I would do the research and I would go and find the architect or the client's information, and I would find their phone number or their email. And then I would just cold email them and be like, I saw that you have this project you're doing. I don't know if you have a contractor. I'm a contractor. You should consider us. And I got fun with it because I was like, I don't like hard sales. I don't like cold calling.
Yep.
But so I just acknowledged that and just kind of just like, you don't even have to respond to this. I just figured if there's an off chance that you are looking for a contractor, here I am, And that's how I got a couple of projects, a couple of big projects, important ones. And the other way that I kept the company afloat was like I said earlier, was just self-performing. We did over $150,000 in self-performed painting our first year, just painting things, like,
doing stuff for free.
Essentially.
Yeah.
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 Don't tell anybody.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I remember at the end of that first year, we made like $50,000 profit for the company, which sounds good. But like, again, I was living in poverty. In fact, by the end of 2012, I was homeless.
Right.
Where we had our office was actually my former boss's teardown house that he gave me 30 days notice. And I was running my office and living out of it. And I decided.
You're in the basement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the office was in the basement, but on the first floor we were living, it was like a ranch house down on Treview, across from Johnny's Tavern. And they ended up building like a self-storage facility. So it's that house is long gone. But I made a choice to get an office space and then just like sleep on people's couches because I was like, I work so many hours, it doesn't matter where I sleep, really. But yeah, so like making money that first year was just like false because like I was living a poor, impoverished life and not very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe not so much of, living kind of down in the gutter, so to speak, but your willingness to put it all on the line and just work and work and work and just, really looking at how to provide and give other people opportunities rather than like what is about me, And I think a lot has to do with some of the other people that you worked with, not having coming from a place of a scarcity mindset, like, hey, an abundance mindset, go out there, kind of do your own thing. And you took advantage of that and worked really hard. And like you said earlier, you and your dad working, 40 hours a week, but then putting in time on the weekends. So 60 hours, 80 hours, whatever it is, and doing whatever you could for success. And it sounds like it was maybe never about the money. It was about creating something that was lasting, giving yourself an opportunity to work with your father and give other people an opportunity to build something.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm contemplative on what it was because I'm trying to think about what it was.
What drove you?
Yeah.
Or like what?
Yeah, as a 20-something, I know that winning was really important to me.
Winning.
I was very competitive, and I know that responsibility, hiring. I remember the early days, I was like, man, I only want a bunch of like single young guys that have no liabilities whatsoever. And then as the years change, you're like, man, I want old people with liabilities because they don't go anywhere.
Right.
Like the young guys with no responsibility. I mean, they're great because you're like, like they don't have that much to cover. But that also means that like it just at the drop of a hat, they're just like, I'm gone. And you're like, oh crap. But like someone with 4 kids and a wife is like, yeah, I got to think about things before I do anything.
Sure.
So it's just a lot more meticulous. But
yep.
Yeah, I mean, I would say honestly, the number one thing was father's pride. That was like what fueled me and carried me, and it was just keeping him happy. And it was really rewarding to, live a life with him in such a so much depth of that pride for so long,
Yeah.
that it made it really easy when like he did unexpectedly pass away. It wasn't easy for that to happen, but like in looking back on our life together, I got to see a full, robust, beautiful life.
Yeah.
And that was hard to come to get to that point. But once I got there, it was like, yeah, man, I lived a whole life with him, and I don't have to regret anything. So
Yeah.
that's really, really powerful to be in that space.
Absolutely. And thanks for, telling us, your background and talking about how you started Compton Construction and what it was like to work with your father. And I think it'd be a good time to take a break. We'll cut to our construction confessions here, and we will be back with Blake to finish out his life story, working with his father and passing, and what it's been like to work without him as well.
Awesome.
Construction Confessions, a raw, real, and sometimes uncomfortable space to share truths from the job site. Whether it's a funny mishap, a lesson learned the hard way, or just a crazy, unbelievable story, these short confessions are here to remind us that we are all human. Sometimes you're the Buddha, and sometimes you're the asshole. All of the confessions are shared with the intention of connection, reflection, and healing. The stories you are about to hear are true. The names have been changed to protect all parties involved.
Hey y'all, my name is Matt, and my construction confession isn't a pretty one. The team that I was working with, we were out on a project, kind of out in the country, rural area, not a lot of people around. Furthest hospital was probably about 15 minutes away, and we were on the job site working, getting everything hooked up, nail guns, getting the materials up on the roof, and we started shingling throughout the morning and the afternoon, and as we were working towards the ridge or the peak of the house, we would snap lines every couple rows up on the roof, and that was really just to keep our shingles straight, right? Well, when you're walking around up on a roof, you gotta keep your head on a swivel, you gotta keep looking out for all kinds of materials and other things. You don't want to trip and fall, and anyways, we were getting closer to the ridge, row by row, and as we were continuing to snap lines, about the last couple rows, we were going to do our last line snap with the chalk line, right? And my coworker, Chuck, started walking towards me to grab my chalk line, and I gave him the one end, and he started walking with the chalk line, and he kept looking back at me, as he was walking the ridge to snap this line. And in the back of my mind, I was like, "Don't look at me, look at where you're walking." And he kept walking towards the gable end of the roof. And right before he was about to get to the end, he turned around and looked at me one last time and literally walked off the roof. Now, we were probably anywhere from like 15 to 20 feet off the ground at this point, and immediately we ran towards him, and he had hit the ground, luckily landed on both of his feet, but in doing so, he broke both of his legs. He was fortunate enough to not land on his head or on his back, but he did break both of his legs, and I can't tell you how fast we ran down the ladder. There was another guy there working with us. We both got down off the ladder, picked Chuck up, and he insisted on not calling an ambulance and having us drive him to the nearest hospital, which again was like 15 minutes away. But needless to say, the car ride there was not fun. He was screaming in pain and agony. And yeah, that's my construction confession. It's not always the prettiest. It's not always the funniest. And sometimes it's gruesome and painful.